joining us once again. We're entering the GEO 2022 Plenary Session 6 on collective action on oceans, climate, and biodiversity. I will just give 30 seconds for conversations to wrap up and for everybody to have their seat so that we can start. Great. Now here is a quick fact. Ocean and atmosphere are two critical components to understand and predict climate change. Ocean is also important for biodiversity as major species loss takes place in oceans and seas. However, did you know that more than 80% of the ocean has never been mapped or explored? Did you also know that ocean observations are currently underfunded? Only a small portion of in situ ocean observations have sustained funding, and there are limited mechanisms available to access medium to long-term funding. Finally, despite the evidence of a key nexus area, there is still a clear disconnect between the ocean, climate, and biodiversity communities. This session aims to demonstrate how an integrated approach to Earth observations for oceans, climate, and biodiversity can achieve impact. GeoBlue Planet will demonstrate how it is coordinating the development of tools and operational services that meet users and GEO members' needs. We will also explore the engagement with government in order to better support the alignment with the UNFCCC, UNCBD, and UN Decade for Ocean Science and other relevant processes. To kickstart this session, once again, we have some housekeeping rules. I'm sure that we can say them together by now, but we'll be taking the questions in three forms. We have on Zoom, you can raise your hand. We'll also be taking questions from this room. You can raise your name card, and then we have Slido, which I will be referring to towards the end of the discussion. And so kindly note that if you have questions, you can send them through Slido. We'll definitely sample them when it's time for the questions session. Also, please note, I think we've had a very good track record. I've not heard any mobile phones ring, so I think everyone deserves a round of applause for that. Kindly continue to keep your phones on silent, and as you send these questions in via the various platforms, please continue to keep the phones on silent. Now, let's start the conversation, of course, with our keynote speaker for this morning's session. Nicole Labeouf is the Assistant Administrator for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Ocean Service, where she oversees all strategic and operational aspects of an organization that has a presence of more than 50 locations around the country. Interestingly, Nicole grew up on the Texas Gulf Coast and knows well the importance of coastal communities to her country. She has sent us a message that we will now play for you all, and then after that we will continue with the rest of the conversation. So she may not be here physically, but I think she still deserves a round of applause before she gives us her message. I think we have a sound challenge.
My name is Nicole Labeouf, and I'm the Assistant Administrator of the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to join you today from Washington, D.C. Thank you to the Group on Earth Observations for inviting me to provide the keynote for this important session on the nexus of ocean, climate, and biodiversity. My name is Nicole LaBeouf, and I am the Assistant Administrator of the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Ocean Service. NOAA has been in the environmental observation and prediction business for over 200 years, and we know that the planet is changing nowhere faster than in the ocean and along the coasts. Ocean and coastal data may very well be the best hope we have at getting ahead of the ever-quickening pace of change right where over 40% of the world's population lives. In the United States, that equates to over 128 million people on the front lines of change. And like so many of you, we are working to understand and predict this change so that people can plan for the future. At NOAA, we provide decision makers with scientific expertise and real-time observations and predictions, including authoritative information on the ocean and coastal environment. NOAA's data on the location, elevation, and vulnerability of communities to coastal hazards like sea level rise or storm surge can help us plan for future conditions now. The ability to plan for change can offset the potential for climate-related destabilization of our supply chain and other potential significant ripple effects across our economy. NOAA is increasingly turning its attention to the power of ocean and coastal information and data to fuel even more investment and effort in equitable, sustainable, and climate-ready activities. In the United States, what we are calling the new blue economy is the capability and capacity for developing ocean data, information, and knowledge rather than relying solely on the extraction of ocean-related material goods to address societal challenges. The new blue economy utilizes the production of ocean and coastal observations to deliver critical insights to decision makers, including our international partners, local, state, and tribal governments, the private sector, and the general public. We believe that this focus on ocean data will contribute to our climate and economic resilience, will help identify synergies between climate and biodiversity impacts, and will increase the positive power that coastal and ocean data can have on an outsized portion of our global society. Decision makers are already seeking the best data and services to safeguard coastal infrastructure, economies, and populations from climate-related impacts. As just one example, we have found that collecting real-time oceanographic data via autonomous ocean sensors called gliders in and around active tropical systems can increase our hurricane intensity forecast accuracy by as much as 50%. These data and innovative uses of technology to derive critical ocean observations are going to be essential as climate change continues to bring with it warmer waters and rising sea levels. In fact, earlier this year, I attended the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, where there was much discussion on the importance of the ocean-climate nexus, including the role of the ocean in global climate regulation and the interdependence of biodiversity and climate change. While there, I participated in an event focused on using emerging technologies to incorporate marine life observations into routine ocean observing activities. We must expand and operationalize our ocean observations to include marine life to support the sustainable use of the marine environment. These conversations will continue at the upcoming Climate COP, COP27 in Egypt, with a thematic day focused on biodiversity. Biodiversity Day is intended to highlight the impacts of climate change on biodiversity and spur global action to halt biodiversity loss and to reduce the impacts of climate change on our living world. It will also include presentations of new initiatives focused on using nature-based solutions to address climate change impacts. I see that earlier this week you discussed how Earth observations can contribute to nature-based solutions and their protection of coastal ecosystems and communities. Tidal marshes, coral reefs, and seagrass beds provide multiple benefits to communities, from coastal storm wave attenuation and flood storage capacity to enhanced water
Recording
services
in progress.
and habitat for fish, wildlife, and plants. Coastal wetlands in the United States alone are estimated to provide $23.2 billion in storm protection services every year. It is our collective responsibility to get better at quantifying the societal contributions of all coastal habitats, including those related to carbon sequestration, ecosystem services, and as tourism destinations in a rapidly changing world. COP27 is meant to be the implementation COP to bring together a greater focus on actualizing commitments made at COP26 to tackle the climate crisis through a range of initiatives and partnerships. For the United States, the Green Shipping Challenge will be an important follow-on activity. We know that emissions from the shipping sector are significant and rising. The Green Shipping Challenge encourages announcements at COP27 on methods to reduce shipping emissions, such as zero-emission fuels, zero-emission vessels, and green shipping corridors. To be certain, eliminating the output of greenhouse gases emissions via a zero-emission vessel is our primary goal. But there may be other potential benefits to be realized as we convert our ship's propulsion systems and rethink our shipping practices. Co-benefits could include reducing underwater noise and enhancing protection for vulnerable marine mammals, like endangered whales, often struck by vessels as whales rest at the surface. In order to not just keep pace with our changing world, but to get ahead of the curve, we must undertake activities that offer not just one solution to one problem, but an innovative solution that addresses many problems. In this way, innovative use of ocean data brings us closer to our goals of preserving biodiversity while mitigating climate change impacts. And COP27 themes like adaptation, water, science, energy, and biodiversity provide opportunities to discuss actionable climate data and information and services in ways that ensure equitable access to tailored climate products and services for local communities and underserved and underrepresented groups. In this important space of equitable climate delivery of services, NOAA is leaning in. This includes working across rural and underserved communities, first by listening and then by taking new approaches to serving their needs. For example, NOAA maintains our nation's authoritative water level sensor network, and from that network we are tracking and projecting sea level rise across U.S. coastlines. Our water level data are essential for our nation's coastal resilience planning, but the impacts of sea level rise will be highly localized. That's why we are working with our partners and communities to identify ways that they can supplement our sensor network with networks of their own to collect water level data at more granular levels for local buy-in and decision-making about protecting communities and preserving important coastal habitats. There are nearly infinite examples of work to be done when it comes to climate, the ocean, and biodiversity. I am optimistic that our global community will rise to the challenge of creating truly sustainable and a resilient world, and I am confident that ocean and coastal observations will be at the heart of some of our best achievements. GEO has an opportunity to increase the utility of observations, bringing together providers and users to meet critical time-sensitive needs around ocean and coastal ecosystems and climate change. By creating these new opportunities for ocean observations and innovation, I believe that together we will lay the foundation for future generations of economic, food, water, energy, biodiversity security, and prosperity. With that, I would like to thank you all again for this opportunity to provide remarks. The United States appreciates the collaborative nature of GEO, and I look forward to hearing about the outcomes of this session and GEO Week. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the plenary.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Now, our next speaker for this morning is Ambassador Tosi Mpanupanu. He is the chair of the UNFCCC subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice. As a negotiator of the Democratic Republic of Congo, he has been actively engaged in the UNFCCC process for many years and has contributed to the successful delivery of key milestones, in particular, the Paris Agreement. Ambassador Tosi was the former chair of various UNFCCC negotiation groups, including the Africa Group, the Least Developed Countries, and the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. He has also previously served as a board member of important financial institutions such as the Green Climate Fund, the Clean Development Mechanism, and the Africa Risk Capacity Agency. I could go on, but essentially, he's the person we're looking at for all the answers. So without further ado, I introduce Ambassador Tosi to address us this morning. Ambassador, please do come up here. Let's continue. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for the kind words. At some point, I was wondering if it was me she was talking about, because the words were very kind. But friends, colleagues, I see myself as a member of the family, the GEO family. We, as the DRC, have just joined GEO. We are the 114th new member, and it feels good to be among family. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this session is all about us. How we collectively look after the systems of our planet as a response to the ongoing threats of climate change and biodiversity loss and ocean change. And we need a holistic and systems approach, a new approach to collectively address these challenges. Earth observation information does not just provide information on the state of the climate system, it also enables governments and other decision makers to implement action. Global climate observation and monitoring needs to cover the entire Earth system, and equally importantly, any effort to monitor, understand, and predict climate and climate-related phenomena depends on access to observations covering the entire globe. The requirement for full transparency around UNFCCC processes means that all parties must be given free and unrestricted access to all climate-related observations. The multi-scale nature of the challenges of climate change requires a clear and cohesive action-based framework for an integrated observation system that optimizes the acquisition and the international exchange of observations, as well as the understanding and uptake of Earth observation information to fully implement the Paris Agreement. At the recent GCOS conference, participants called for the establishment of a global goal on observation under the UNFCCC. This should guide the needed action-oriented framework for observation to assist recognition, understanding, and coordination of activities by international, regional, and national stakeholders to deliver climate information on the impacts of climate change and for mitigation and adaptation action, as well as reporting. It is clear that a global coordinated system will be an opportunity to build a joint approach that can be much more than the sum of its parts. These are some of the messages that will be covered at the upcoming COP27 by discussions under the Research and Systematic Observation Agenda, which is being held under the helm of the subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice, which I have the honor to chair. We hope very much to have a successful decision and high-level recognition in the overarching decision of the fundamental place of observation and climate information for decision-making. Friends, colleagues, those are the few words I had prepared to address this August Assembly Thank you very much for the attention.
Do you hear me? Great. So as we did mention, and thank you very much for the presentation at the start, we can ask you anything. So that's what I'm about to do. But Ambassador, do you think it would be possible to have a joint approach on ocean climate and biodiversity? I mean, for instance, would it be realistic to consider a common monitoring framework to reconcile different reporting exercises under the UNFCCC and the UNCBD, for example?
Well, I think it will make a lot of sense. It will also be good in terms of efficiency and avoidance of duplication of efforts. Similar endeavors are being undertaken under different groups and for the same converging objective. So it can only make sense that instead of talking past each other, we talk to each other and capitalize on the lesson learned by others and try to build synergies so that collectively we can represent more might and more resources in order to find solutions which sometimes are characterized by cross-cutting issues. When you talk about climate change, it is what I always call the first issue of mandatory global solidarity. And that issue can be managed from different entry points, whether you take it from the angle of purely global emissions or other elements that have to do with adverse effect of climate change. And we know that those affect different walks of life, such as biodiversity. So I think the objective is the same, ensuring that the planet is better off, ensuring that we reach the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and let us try to join our heads together and try to collectively make a contribution to the same objective.
In terms of joining our heads together, what about the financial aspect of it? Where do you see the opportunities to promote investments to support a joint approach for ocean climate biodiversity?
Yes, so this discussion sometimes from people who have an economic mindset will always look at the discussion from the cost and benefits prism. And I think that the benefits far exceeds the cost. Depending on which type of observation we're looking at, as regards one pertaining to our atmosphere, there seems to be abundant funding, whether public, whether private. When it comes to observation that has to do with land, ocean, it seems that everything related to the research, the observation, is oftentimes project-based, more short-termed. So it is important that we explore avenues in order to ensure that there is more sustainability in terms of funding. And of course, we know that a lot of private sector actors today have abundant funds, and maybe it would be important for them to be reined into this sustainable funding. But once again, the core nature of this initiative, where information is available and is open to everyone, needs to remain paramount. If the private sector comes, the private sector needs to adapt because it's not about trying to make a benefit, it's not about trying to make a quick buck, it's about ensuring that the scientific community best serves vulnerable people in different parts of the world so that they can benefit from the collective efforts that we are achieving together.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'm sure we'll continue the conversation as we go on with today's session. But let me introduce our second speaker for this morning. Nicklene McLean is a 2022 National Sea Grant Canals Marine Policy Fellow at NOAA, supporting the GEO Blue Planet initiative. She's currently working on several projects in GeoBlue Planet geared towards the integration of Earth observations data into the decision support frameworks used to address climate adaptation, coastal and marine pollution, and sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. She's also a PhD candidate at the Morgan State University in Maryland, using remote sensing technology to study the population dynamics of jellyfish in the Chesapeake Bay. I'm interested to know more about that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome her to the podium, Nicolene McLean.
Thank you very much, Atiwan, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I would first like to begin by saying thank you to the organizers of the 18th GEO Plenary for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation. And I'd also like to say Madasi to our colleagues here in the Republic of Ghana for your warm reception, as well as your support throughout the course of the weeks as we've been preparing our sessions today. So as was mentioned before, my name is Nicolene McLean, and I am the 2022 Knaus Marine Policy Fellow at the, at the Satellite Oceanography and Climatology Division of NESDIS at NOAA, and I help to contribute to the US contribution to the GeoBlue Planet initiative. Today, I'll be making a presentation on some of the outcomes of the GeoBlue Planet Symposium, which we hosted here in Accra last week from October 24th through to the 28th. So for persons who may not be aware, GeoBlue Planet is the ocean and coastal arm of the Group on Earth Observations that works to use ocean and coastal observations to support policy and decision-making. GeoBlue Planet conducts its activities around the three core action areas of stakeholder engagement, cooperation and co-design, and capacity development. So there are quite a few activities within GeoBlue Planet's portfolio of activities that are geared towards bridging the gap between ocean and coastal observational data to deliver actionable information. It's quite interesting to note that all of GeoBlue Planet's activities support and contribute to the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And so here are a few of the current activities within GeoBlue Planet's portfolio. And so as I mentioned before, GeoBlue Planet conducts its activities around these three core action areas. One of our main stakeholder engagement activities is the hosting of symposia. So every 1 to 2 years, GeoBlue Planet hosts these symposia in different regions of the world in an attempt to expand the GeoBlue Planet community of practice, to get feedback on activities and projects within our current portfolio, and also to gain key insight from stakeholders on projects that can be developed to meet a specific need. This year, GeoBlue Planet conducted its 5th GeoBlue Planet Symposium here in Accra, from October 24th through to the 28th, so that was last week, under the theme, Local Action in Support of Global Traction. And this year's symposium was specifically geared towards improving GeoBlue Planet's engagement with African stakeholders, improving and strengthening adaptive capacity, and also providing access to tools and resources that can be used to support the sustainable management of ocean and coastal resources. The symposium was made possible by our partners at the EU for Ocean OBS program, which is being implemented by the Mercator Ocean International, as well as the Atlantic International Research Center and our local collaborators here at the University of Energy and Natural Resources and the University of Ghana. So there were quite a number of events that were featured at this year's symposium, the first of which were plenary sessions. And so these plenary sessions were organized around the themes of fisheries, ecosystem conservation, and coastal hazards. These themes were selected based on a review of the engagement priorities that were set forth by regional governing bodies related to oceans and coasts. And so in these plenary sessions, they were designed to first highlight some of the key user needs related to stakeholders on a local level, Then we provided a demonstration of some of the tools and impact that have been developed using ocean and coastal observations to address these specific issues. And finally, we provided a demonstration of some inspiring examples of the successful implementation of coastal and ocean-derived products to support the sustainable management of ocean and coastal resources. In addition to these plenary sessions, we also hosted a number of training sessions that were geared towards providing persons or symposium attendees with information related to how ocean and coastal observational data can be used to support decision-making, as well as more technical sessions that were geared towards providing practitioners with skills to fine-tune their ability to process, retrieve, and analyze ocean and coastal data. There was also an interactive poster forum where we really wanted to give symposium attendees the opportunity to have more informal exchanges with members of the ocean and coastal observational value chain. And it's interesting to note that quite a few of our major outcomes were found during these less formal exchanges between attendees and Earth observation experts. We also hosted the Copernicus Private Sector Opportunities session, which was geared towards providing small and medium enterprises with the platform to give pitches based on their current businesses, activities that utilized Copernicus data to build linkages, make collaborations, and discuss some of the key needs of these small and medium enterprises. Finally, we hosted thematic workshops that were geared towards allowing stakeholders to work very closely with Earth observation experts to come up with projects that meet a specific need using ocean and coastal observational data. And these workshops were based on Earth observations for fisheries and aquaculture site selection. There was a workshop on ocean and coastal observations for national adaptation plans. And there were also a workshop based on the use of Earth observations for coastline changes, marine litter monitoring, as well as sargassum monitoring. We're very pleased to have welcomed over 200 participants at this year's Geoblue Planet Symposium, all of whom were very highly engaged from very diverse backgrounds. We're more pleased by the fact that we were able to make local impact, as more than half of our participants were from local entities here in Ghana and from regional initiatives from neighboring countries along the west coast of Africa. We're also very proud of the fact that we had a near equal balance in gender participation, which is something that we consider to be a success, and quite the fervor and interest by quite a few early career scientists who were interested in exploring the role of Earth observations to support sustainable marine and coastal resources. Finally, I consider that it was a highlight that our symposium was mentioned in local national broadcast media, again, emphasizing the local impact that we were able to make here in Ghana. So based on our engagement over the course of the week, we noted that there were quite a few needs that were highlighted that Geoblue Planet and members of the Group on Earth Observations community can help address. Some of these key challenges were highlighted as it relates to access to data and also to published information related to the use of ocean and coastal observations for the management of sustainable resources. There was also a need for more youth science engagement at elementary levels, as it was mentioned that a lot of the youth in Ghana and in surrounding countries are not aware of the many careers and paths that are available to persons who pursue marine science and remote sensing careers. And so earlier exposure to the possibility of science, engineering, and STEM fields would be beneficial to supporting the future sustainability of these resources, as there would be more interest garnered from a younger age. There was also mention for a continued GEO support for better collaboration between Earth observation scientists and governing bodies, as well as a need for capacity development activities to support analysis of satellite data for long-term applications and more cost-effective methods of in-situ data capture. There's also quite the resounding need for more opportunities for African youth who are interested in marine sciences and remote sensing, as well as a need for more funding opportunities and resource mobilization to support local and regional projects. So some of the key outcomes and future activities that GeoBlue Planet plans to explore moving forward based on the needs that were highlighted during our workshops are: we plan to develop an information hub for fisherfolk and other stakeholders to expand the reach and efficiency of the GMES and Africa Marine Weather Early Warning Service. And this is a warning service that is currently being implemented here in Ghana to support the safety of lives at sea of artisanal fishers. We also propose the development of a charter for blue schools and blue careers to help promote aquaculture, to support the development of aquaculture here in Ghana, as well as the fact that we will be organizing teams to support on the guidance, to provide support on the guidance for national adaptation plans with specific emphasis on coastal adaptation, fisheries, and aquaculture. We also plan to develop a plan to support the integrated use of land-to-sea litter monitoring using Earth observations and citizen science. And finally, we plan to engage local stakeholders and policymakers to build inclusive and integrated regional solutions to coastal hazards. And so on behalf of my GeoBlue Planet colleagues at NOAA, Mercator Ocean International, and the Korea Maritime Institute, I would say that the GeoBlue Planet Symposium was quite the success, and it was a demonstration of the local impact that geo activities and programs can have in contributing to the global action and global traction towards using Earth observations to support the sustainable management of our resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicklene. Please do have a seat. Thank you very much. As you can see, two gentlemen are already approaching the stage, so let me quickly introduce them. Issa Elegbede is a senior academic specialized in ocean and coastal resources sustainability who lectures at the Fisheries Department at Lagos State University in Nigeria. He is co-chair of the joint GeoBlue Blue Planet Fisheries Working Group. Also, he is deputy chair of one of the arms of International Union for Conservation of Nature and a fellow of Future Earth Coast. In case you don't know who he is, since they came together, this is Issa, ladies and gentlemen. Now, right next to Issa, we have Toste Tanua. Now, he is a senior scientist at GEOMA in Germany and co-chair of the Global Ocean Observing System, GOOSE. He's also the project coordinator of EuroSea, the H2020 European project supporting the G7 Future of Seas and Ocean Flagship Initiative. Toste had participated in more than 35 research cruises, lived for 3 years on a boat, and has been involved in several projects related to the development of sustained ocean and observing systems. So technically, he's a fisherman, right? So this is Toste. A round of applause for him too. So these are our panelists for this session. All of them have spoken, not all of them. The two gentlemen have not. But to start the session, the panel discussion essentially, I do have a quick question for Nicklene, Issa, and Toste. And I'm going to start ladies first. So Nicklene, be ready. If you had to give one reason, what is the key reason why integration needs to happen?
Thank you for that question. I think that Integration is crucial to support the many measures that need to be taken to reduce the vulnerability of at-risk coastal communities and ecosystems that are already facing the ill effects of the many manifestations of climate change.
So?
Thanks so much. From a scientific point of view, I would like to say that all these components, that is the ocean, climate and biodiversity, are interconnected. And one of the key reasons why we need to put all these things together is because of, number one, protecting the planet, and as well, ensuring that our biodiversity is not lost, and as well, talking about the capacity to ensure that the human component of the ocean are infused into planning and as well into ensuring that we have a sustainable society. Thank you.
Toste.
Thank you for the question. So it's really a question of...
Can we please have his mic on?
it's really...
Okay.
I can use your mic. So it's really a question of efficiency. There are many advantages of integration, and the principle is measure once, use many times. And very often, a particular measurement and observation you do can be used for many other purposes than the one that you initially figured out and you got funded for. So it's really about efficiency of the system to have that integration and talk between the different communities of ocean observations.
Mm-hmm. And Ambassador, I'm sure you agree with all of this. This is similar to what we had discussed earlier before they came on. Now, Issa, when we listened to Niclene's presentation, we have seen a list of needs identified at the GeoBlue Planet Symposium. You have been involved in GeoBlue and Geobiodiversity Observation Network, GeoBon. Have you been able to clearly identify user needs around climate ocean biodiversity, for example, in the fisheries sector?
Yes, thank you, Atwin, for that question. Yeah, looking at the event we had last week, we identified so many needs, especially talking about fisheries, which I chaired one of the session. Yeah, some of the needs that we identified include inclusiveness, especially bringing all stakeholders on board, and looking at the concept of protecting our biodiversity, a situation whereby we need to manage these resources sustainably. And we have also seen from the symposium issues surrounding loss of yield in our captures. So there's the need to talk about all this, and as well not excluding aspects of reducing exploitations, because we see our resources as being there and we need to protect for our future generations. And apart from this, the need for accessing open data, because we highlighted the needs of users, particularly the community people, and how they are able to explore this. And lastly, to see how to explore, to match between traditional knowledge and Western knowledge. Thank you.
Niclene, I saw you nodding quite a bit when Issa was responding. Would you want to add to what he said?
Yes, thank you. So although the Marine Biodiversity Observing Network is the primary initiative that focuses on tackling issues related to the loss of marine biodiversity, we have recognized that there is some overlap between GeoBlue Planet's activities and the potential for tackling issues related to marine biodiversity loss, particularly as it relates to fisheries. So based on our stakeholder engagement, we have recognized that there is quite a bit of concern as it relates to shifts in species distribution as it relates to climate change. Now, in some countries, such as small island developing states, fisheries contributes more than 60% to their GDPs. And so if there are shifts in species distribution as a result of climate change, that might cause the shift of a lot of their income out of their exclusive economic zones. And this is quite important, as it can have a detrimental impact on their economies. And so, yes, although there is an initiative that's geared towards tackling these issues, there is some consideration being made within GeoBlue Planet for the use of Earth observations to help support the sustainability and reduction in the loss of marine biodiversity.
That's very important. Toste, what else can ocean observation community provide in terms of information and services to stakeholders to respond to climate action and biodiversity protection needs?
So thank you. So I think the ocean observing community has a long track record of providing useful information on climate change and biodiversity, and also support in mitigation. When we talk about support for adaptation, that is really a new field, and we are trying to learn. And I can give you two examples where I think we can make some progress. And the first one is the concept of the digital twin ocean. This is a tool that allows managers and decision makers to ask the what-if question. How would the system react if you take that measure? And the digital twin, if you don't know, has basically three components. It's a data lake, all the observations that you can gather into that, in machinery, a modeling framework, and then a delivery of information in a useful format for decision makers. Well, the ocean observing community needs to fill the data lake. It's really what we need to do, and particularly for the in situ observing system, we have many data that are not easily integrated because they are not fair and not interoperable. So we need to do that better, and we also need to have sufficient amount of data, and I think here the digital twin has an important feedback loop into the system. The digital twin can inform this observing system where we have gaps and maybe redundancies in the system, so we can improve on that. And the second example I would like to take here is ocean carbon. Carbon is taken up by the ocean. In fact, about 40% of the accumulated fossil fuel emissions since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution is stored in the ocean. And currently the ocean is taking up more than 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide on an annual basis. But we have pretty high uncertainty in that number, around 25%, and I would say that is unacceptable. We need to do better on that. So here we need more observations, and we need to merge the in situ observations with the remote sensing observations. So really, I think most of the products that we are delivering in the ocean observing community has an increased value as soon as you can have a meaningful and efficient combination of the remote sensing and in situ components. And remember, the ocean is deep, and remote sensing have a hard time to see below the surface, and many of the essential ocean and essential climate variables cannot be measured remotely. And the flip side of the carbon uptake in the ocean, taking out so much carbon dioxide and reducing climate change, is ocean acidification. Carbon dioxide dissolves in the ocean and is an acid. It's acidifying the ocean. And this has negative effects on many marine species and ecosystems. So by monitoring carbon uptake, you monitor climate change and biodiversity at the same time. But of course, there is also a positive, probably positive, effect of the ocean. Ocean can be a solution, and there are many marine carbon dioxide removal schemes that involves the ocean. No matter what you think about such removal schemes, it's essential to have an efficient ocean observing system to monitor the efficiency and maybe any possible side effects of such schemes. And in the end, it's also about money, because these companies that are going to do this, they expect to sell the carbon credits. One of these schemes is called blue carbon. So that is usually thinking about increasing the carbon storage in the coastal zone marine biota, like mangrove and seagrass meadows. Even though the amount of carbon in total is relatively small on a global scale, it's been ticking up on that. There is some carbon there, and it's more important than maybe having this ecosystem re-established in the coastal zone is usually important for biodiversity and for coastal resilience. And again, here, an ocean observing system that can monitor the efficiency of this blue carbon measures is really important, and I think very good then for ecosystems. Thank you.
And Ambassador Tosi, these are clearly all interrelated, and the benefits, as explained, are huge. What kind of feedback from countries are you getting regarding their needs on ocean observation within climate negotiations?
First of all, I agree with everything that has been said by Nikoli, Issa, and Totsi. I believe that there was a lot of convergence in what they said, and it was quite insightful. That said, what I take from the climate change negotiations, it's that ocean observation needs to be strengthened because it does bring some added value to countries when they are trying to plan their adaptation needs, when they're trying to look at what opportunities exist in terms of mitigation or adaptation when it comes to climate action. I believe that countries understand that gaps exist, and for them to make informed decisions as regards investing in more resilient activities, you need to do that based on knowledge. So it is important to strengthen the capacity as regards ocean observation and to try to use what is so-called generally as nature-based solutions in order to do a better job. It's interesting and not necessarily related, but the other day I was discussing with Erica from the GEO Secretariat, and we were talking about a community in the US that was using as a main activity fishing of oyster. The community overused the resource, and the resource disappeared for about 100 years, and it has huge impact on the community in terms of economics, in terms of tourism, in terms of culture. So I think this is the type of lessons that we need to learn in order for us to make wise decisions so that the resource can be managed sustainably, and that we can also face the adverse effect of climate change, some that have been mentioned by Totsi, such as acidification of water, and how it impacts the biodiversity of the ocean and impacts all the activities that are related to fishermen activities. Thank you.
And Nicolene, how do we tackle the issue of strengthening the links between climate biodiversity policy frameworks in relation to ocean issues? As far as you're concerned, what's the best approach?
I think that GEO and the GEO community is uniquely positioned to provide open access to ocean data that can help make some of the linkages between oceans, climates, and biodiversity that will be necessary to support the decisions to ensure the sustainable management of these resources. I also think that GEO is uniquely positioned as it has convening powers over a number of different agencies, different organizations, different communities, and can help strengthen some of these linkages that are essential to support the integration of the ocean, climate, and biodiversity nexus.
Issa, what are your views on this?
Thank you, Atwin. Yeah, understanding the capacity of GEO towards coordinating all stakeholders. Yeah, it is important to also recognize that GEO being able to explore data, especially the capacity to share open data, to support reporting and as well for decision making, because there's need to work with all stakeholders, exploring both top-bottom and bottom-top relationship, so that we can have impact in all these efforts, because we know resources have been infused into all this. Then likewise, GEO having the ability to reach out to communities And this community you are talking about is not only the communities at the top cadre. We're talking about reaching out to all communities, both the top, middle, and the down, particularly the people that are below, that require their problems to be tackled. Thank you.
Toasty, with regard to the same question, can we look at the aspect of potentially the G7, G20 processes, also the Ramsar Convention, Sendai framework, how all this comes together?
So I think that the organizations that are active in ocean observing should try to speak with one voice in much more than we do. We have a lot of complementarity. I'm talking about organizations like GEO and GEO-18, and also GOOS, the organization I represent, and POGO, which represent the leading marine scientific research institutions of the world. Speaking with one voice is a much more powerful message, and we don't risk to dilute the message with too many inputs. So I think that's something that we have done a few times. POGO and GOOS had a joint statement to the SABSTA Climate Ocean Nexus discussions this year, for instance. GeoGlobe and GOOS are working very efficiently now to create an ocean observing system for marine debris called IMDOS. So there are things going on, and I think we need to do this more efficiently. It takes a lot of overhead to get that process initiated and started, but the rewards of working together is very high. So I think that's something that we can work on together and have a joint message.
So in that case, would a joint position paper be a good way to start?
Yeah, I think that's a good start, and I think the one that I just mentioned here for the sub-studies here was a good start, and I think we can do more of that. So joint position papers, working together, and streamlining our messages and how we work together is important. And I would particularly like to point out the benefits of integrating remote sensing and in situ data. I mentioned that in my intervention just before, and I think that is key, and I think that is a place where GEO can play a very strong role in creating that synergy, in creating these products for stakeholders that have extra value.
I see you nodding quite a bit. Nicklene, would you want to add to that?
I think that, as Toste mentioned, there is a need for more collaboration as it relates to the activities within GEO. As he mentioned, GeoBlue Planet is working with GOOS on the IMDOS, Integrated Marine Debris Observing System, to help bridge some of the gaps that might exist that can be addressed using Earth observations. And so in nodding, I was agreeing to the fact that there needs to be better collaboration across GEO program activities to promote the efforts needed to support sustainable development.
We can now open the floor to questions. We can take questions via Slido. Okay. They've popped up already. We'll take questions from the floor. We'll also take questions via Zoom. I'm going to start with Slido, since that's what I'm seeing quickly. Nicklene, I believe this is for you. During the training, what score of challenges were recorded by the local participants?
Thank you for that question. So, as I mentioned before, we had two streams of trainings, the first of which were geared towards providing information on how ocean and coastal observations can be used to support decision making, and the others that was geared towards providing more technical guidance to practitioners of Earth observations. I would say that there were some concerns as it relates to the fundamental understanding of ocean and coastal observations. And these challenges were highlighted by some of the students at local and regional institutions and universities who mentioned that it's very limiting for them to understand how Earth observations can be used to support decision making if they don't have access to freely and openly published journals and information that can help solidify their understanding of ocean and coastal observations. And so if we can help provide more access to publications that can provide fundamental and foundational knowledge, I think moving forward we would be a lot more effective at carrying out and implementing these trainings.
Thank you very much for that. Another question, digital twins. How does GOOS see making data lakes interoperable across in situ space and across climate, ocean, biodiversity?
So thank you, this is a great question. I think we need to start making the in situ data interoperable or fair in the first place. And GOOS have that principle that we operate observing networks we have 10 different networks. So these are ships and gliders and floats, etc. These groups of communities are developing data protocols, metadata standards, and so on, all that stuff that is needed to make the data fair. Some networks, like the Argo network, is far down the road, and that data is easily taken up by Met Services, Copernicus, etc. Other networks are still some way to go. That could be, fixed moorings and stuff like that, where different standards and metadata standards are still existing. And at the same time, GOOS is trying to increase the number of networks. For instance, we have autonomous surface vehicles. So these are robots sailing on the surface of the ocean, driven or propelled by wind or waves, and powered by the sun, making observations. And they are still forming a network and agreeing on best standards. So once the networks has these technical capabilities, then I think it's a different question. I think that is something that is being solved by partners like Copernicus and so on, how to integrate in situ and remote sensing data. But our first priority is to make sure that we have all the observations covered by networks, and all networks are making fair data.
Thank you. Isa, would you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thanks so much. Just with that, I think it is important to explore the possibilities of bringing all stakeholders on board on especially taking in situ data. And we know that exploring Earth observation data might not be enough. There is need to integrate with other kinds of data, basically the in situ data, and to channel through the value chain of data usage, so that the last person in the chain will be able to uptake the data and valorize the data towards making impact for its activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We have a question from the European Commission. After that, we'll go to France. European Commission.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's a comment and an invitation to all. I think this subject and this discussion has shown really the raison d'etre, why we're here, and we have been, I think, all through this plenary looking at not only how we provide data to scientists and what data, but also how we can actually translate this data into knowledge and information that is directly actionable by different stakeholders. And as Nicole mentioned also earlier in her presentation on the GEO Blue Planet Symposium that took place last week, it has actually been very highly successful in this regard by increasing the regional linkages and by identifying concrete local needs and promoting collaboration between stakeholders and the observing community. I would like to mention in this context also the EU mission, the mission that is aiming to restore our ocean and waters by 2030, and in particular the digital twin ocean, which has been mentioned also by Toster, which was announced by President von der Leyen at the One Ocean Summit last February in Brest. The DTO will make ocean knowledge open access available to citizens, to scientists, and to policymakers around the world. It will be a platform for global cooperation, enabling all ocean actors to perform impact assessments, empowering them also to collect and share the responsibility of marine and coastal habitats, and to actively support a sustainable blue economy. My invitation to you today would be to follow its development and collaborate actively, also with your own initiatives, the synergies that we spoke about during the discussion, under the framework of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, and also the DITO program in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much. France?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this great session. Really, I have just a very short question. What do you think of making the ocean a priority for GEO in the context of the UN Decade of the Ocean? It's the beginning of this decade. So what do you think of this?
I think everybody would want to respond to this. Okay. Ambassador, would you want to start? What do you think of making the ocean a priority for GEO? That mean for GEO? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it will make perfect sense to do so. It is such an important resource to all of us, and it is important to fully understand what are the trends affecting it, what are the different physical phenomena affecting it, because oftentimes people look at the adverse effect of climate change and look it through the prism of terrestrial observation. And I think that we need to look at the largest space of this Earth, which is covered by ocean, and to look at how it is being affected by climate change, and how it is a runaway phenomenon which needs to be observed closely, because it's going to be hitting us hard when it comes to our wallet. And I think that it's important to, in a way, cost all those phenomena, because this is what we do understand when it comes to how much we're going to be ending up paying at the end. So I think we need to support this work as much as possible, try to mobilize necessary resources, and really ensure that we continue to operate in the realm of collaborative effort, in the realm of free information, because I'm afraid that the minute we're trying to monetize all this knowledge, unfortunately, the ones who have more will have more ability to cope with this phenomenon than those of us we are capacity and resource constrained. Thank you.
Nicolene?
I do apologize, but I didn't hear the question very clearly. Do you mind repeating?
Yes, sorry. Just my question was, what do you think of choosing the ocean as the next priority, one of the next priority of GEO?
Oh, thank you very much for that question. Merci beaucoup. I think that the ocean plays a tremendous role in ensuring the sustainability and the livability of our current environment, and it should be made a top priority. Given the many manifestations of climate change, there are so many risks to coastal environments, coastal ecosystems that can be addressed using Earth observations. And I think it would be worthwhile to explore how we can use ocean observing and coastal observing to explore how we can address some of these issues. And so I think given that GEO is uniquely positioned to convene and to provide resource mobilization and collaboration across different agencies, different countries, different communities, that it is uniquely positioned to provide insight and combat some of the impacts of the ocean using Earth observations.
Great, Isa.
Yeah, thanks so much, Messi. I would like to say that going by the decade of action that talks about inclusivity, talking about the matter of urgency, and as well exploring innovative technologies with all this goes in line with Earth observation. And based on this, Blue Planet and as well GEO have been working towards bringing all stakeholders on board, particularly exploring innovative technology. For example, we had the experience of the GMS with safety at sea, where fishers are protected using inclusive technology, because we realize in Africa, not everyone might have access to smartphone. However, it is possible that they use their USSD app to explore some of this data. That is what I'm talking about, inclusivity. And lastly, with Earth observation, it is required to get support from global north to global south. We can't do it alone. We need to work together to collaborate and as well to share ideas and to share knowledge. Yeah, thank you.
Thursday.
I think my colleagues here answered that question very well. I don't have much to add, but just to iterate one more time how important the ocean is for climate and for biodiversity and for sustaining life on Earth in general. I think we should not ignore the ocean. We should make sure that we have an adequate ocean observing system combining in situ and remote sensing utilities or assets.
Great, thank you very much. We have Norway via Zoom. After that, we will go to Finland on the floor. So, Norway, you can switch on your mic. We can hear you now.
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much. Very interesting panel discussion. I have heard that you mentioned here in the GEO plenary yesterday and today a reference to the FAIR principles. I just wanted to point you to the GEO data sharing and data management principles that we just recently had a so-called dialogue series where we went through all of these principles together with the members of the GEO work program. And there's several instances where we show actually how the GEO data sharing principles and data management principles complement the FAIR and the CARE and the trust principles. I just wanted to help us remember that we do have some powerful interoperability tools in our possession in the GEO community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. Any other questions via Zoom? Please remember to just raise your hand and we'll come to you. We have a question or contribution or comment from Finland.
Hello, thank you very much. Well, I put it in Slido as well. So the fishing fleets, that what could they do? But I would want here to maybe explain the background, because I think we need to find always these kind of mutually beneficial, kind of like we do something useful for someone and then it comes back for us as well. And I think in ocean observations, we probably are in a place where more observations would be better. So what kind of ideas has this panel on what could be something that fishing fleets, for example, could provide to the ocean observing system?
Thank you, Mikko in Finland, for that question. I think generally first, I think for having sufficient data from the ocean, we need to engage the general public and civil society in making data. There are a lot of assets in the ocean, commercial ships like container vessels or ferries, and even private ships like fishing boats or sailing boats. And we have seen the last decade or so in development in sensors that allows non-science actors to take really good ocean observing data, right? So without engaging the civil society to help us get the data, we won't get where we want. And the fishing fleets is particularly interesting because they spend a lot of time at sea, obviously, some more coastal, some further away. And I can see how we could equip some of these fishing boats with sensors for underway measurements of different variables. There have been projects in Europe where you put, or there still are, where you put sensors on trawls, for instance, for fishers. And what that gives you is the subsurface temperature, and that is really important for things like weather forecast, but it also informs back the fishers because they link that to catch, right? So you get information on subsurface temperature and salinity, and you link that to catch, and that gets back to your smartphone or the fisherman, and he can understand where the colleagues are, where the catch is good, and where to look for. So it's a win-win situation for fishers. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to engage civil society with modern technology, and I think we need to make that modern technology better and easier to use and plug and play, like how easy it is today to download a new app on your cell phone, right? So this kind of technology step changes is what we need to really engage that civil society in ocean observing.
And Toste, as follow-up to this, how do we make sure that the ocean and biodiversity data is used towards the public good?
I think first of all, we have to make sure that we have open and free and fair data. And that opens the possibility to use this data for public good, but it also opens the possibility to use data for profit, to make a business. And I think that's really important to recognize that there are business opportunities to get from ocean observations and services. You can think about making a service for aquaculture operators on warning for marine extreme events, heat waves, low pH, low oxygen events, and they will be able to, and willing probably, to pay for that service because they can take mitigation actions when something like that is coming towards their aquaculture farm. So I don't think we should exclude or think that private profit and business opportunity is something bad. I think we need to work together there.
Great. Any of the panelists have anything to add?
Yes.
Isa? Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dustin. I think there's need to look at how this data could be adequately available to the public, which is very important. And likewise, it is important to translate some of these languages, some of these metadata to ways whereby the local person out there, that fisherman out there will be able to appreciate and benefit from this data. That's very important. I think this issue is not only affecting probably people in the region, I mean in the African region, it's also affecting the global concern whereby all this data will be available to the local person and they'll be able to appreciate it, to be able to enhance their livelihood and to upgrade their social benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Tosi, and thank you, Isa. I would also like to add that in order for us to ensure that ocean and biodiversity data is used towards the public good, that we should have and host campaigns to disseminate or share the impact that this data can have on the sustainable management of these resources. And this was demonstrated last week at the Geoblue Planet Symposium. After we held the training sessions geared towards providing information on how you can use Earth observation to support decision-making, there was a change in tide as it relates to the symposium attendees who never knew that you can use this data to support the management of resources in their backyard. And so I think if as a community we are to take the initiative to have and host more campaigns to share the impact that this data can have, I think that we would be in a better position moving forward.
Well, my take on the issue is similar to what colleagues have said. I think it's important that we're able to have as broadly as possible access to credible, reliable, and high-quality data. And it is my understanding that has a cost in terms of know-how, in terms of resources. And we need to make sure that there is sustainable funding for that knowledge to be available. I certainly take Tosti's point when he says that we can develop some application for which people will be willing to pay. But I come from a climate change prism, and for me, when you have to face adverse effect of climate change you did not create, if on top of it you have to pay for such services, you sometimes have to get loans in order to access services. It makes this a little bit of an equity issue. So I will be one that hopes that this type of good quality data will be free-flowing and contributing to a collective knowledge which can serve communities as much as possible and can have an impact. And for this knowledge to be disseminated, to create ownership, it is important to, like Nikeli was explaining, to showcase what type of effect it can have on communities and different type of activities.
Great, thank you so much. We're just wrapping up the conversation now. As we wrap up, and this is for each of you, I'll start with Tosti. We'll go this way this time round. Tell us the single most important action that GEO should be taking to promote the integration among ocean climate biodiversity in the next year.
So thank you for that last question. In my point of view, I think GEO is uniquely positioned to make sure that we can create information products by combining in situ and remote sensing data into products and in information that is useful directly to the stakeholders and decision makers. Yeah.
Yes, thanks so much. From my side, I would like to say there's need for extensive capacity building among stakeholders. And taking from the point of Nicolene, talking about introducing ocean knowledge right from elementary classes, very important, because we see our planet and we here on the terrestrial platform are just occupying less than 30%. So the ocean occupying more than around 70% tells us that there's need to know a lot of things happening in the ocean. Then secondly, or thirdly, we need to look at the concept of the decade of action as asked by the French delegate, that is leaving no one behind. It is important to have, to explore partnerships, collaborations, and as well, like I said, bringing support and sharing information, knowledge between the global south and the global north, particularly letting our governments to explore co-management or collaborative or co-designing in taking our policies. This will have a way towards monitoring our progress and as well having an impactful success, especially looking at this period of decade of action, the 10 years we have, it's a big responsibility for everyone, including me sitting here or the other person sitting there that doesn't even understand the big grammar we're talking here. So we need to bring it down to the local, and let's see how everybody will get along. Thank you.
Great. Nicolene?
I think that in the next year, GEO can work on combining the efforts of multiple activities within the GEO work program to develop projects that integrate different aspects of marine biodiversity, ocean well-being, ocean research, and climate adaptation. I also think that GEO is uniquely positioned to help the cross-fertilization of a lot of these efforts, as well as support resource mobilization to help bring these projects to life.
Thank you. Ambassador?
Yes, when you take international environmental governance as it pertains to climate, as it pertains to biodiversity, They rest on the UNFCCC and on the UNCBD. And those two conventions have overarching bodies, which are the COPs, where 190 plus parties come and meet once every year or once every 2 years. And it is important that GEO is recognized in the decisions which are taken by those COPs, because it's going to put GEO in a very high anchoring position. And then those COPs decisions, when they need to be translated into action, will make sure that there is a mainstreaming of what GEO does and what activities GEO is a proponent for. And it's going to have a trickling down effect, and will really ensure that GEO is further democratized than it is today. Because those COPs, when they take decisions, they then task the substar, and there is one under the UNFCCC and one under CBD, and they also task the SBI, which is the body for implementation, to do work. And if work is tasked to be done with GEO, guess what? Resources will be mobilized by those parties to those conventions in order to ensure that there is a coherence between the decision they took at the COP and implementation to serve the parties. So make sure that you as a civil society organization, you as parties, make sure that you are in Sharm el-Sheikh next week for the COP27 of UNFCCC, and that next month you go to Montreal for COP15 of CBD. Thank you.
I think the panelists deserve a round of applause. And on that note, we have consensus on a new direction should be towards integration, ocean, climate, biodiversity communities. It's important to consider a common monitoring framework to reconcile reporting under UNFCCC and UNCBD to avoid duplication. GEO is uniquely positioned to support integration among communities and space in situ observations, mobilize resources, reach the communities on the ground. Action points: partnerships for technical support, develop capacity, GEO Blue Planet to continue work on NAP guidance for coastal zones involving MBON and other partners to provide data sets and products, advocacy, speak with one voice, streamline messaging, have joint position between GEO, Goose, and Pogo, and others in relevant fora, finance, tap into multiple sources, including the private sector. Everybody in agreement say aye? It's time for lunch, ladies and gentlemen. And so we end the session right now. Kindly go to where you went for lunch yesterday, and we will reconvene at exactly 2 p.m. Thank you very much for your time, and do have a wonderful afternoon.
Lamb Crop Month Early Warning community for their trust in me in leading this activity over the years, and my colleagues at the University of Maryland and NASA Harvest, without which none of this work would be realized. I would especially thank my mentor, Dr. Imbal Becker. Of EO for good. Not only for providing early warning of these events, allowing for early action by governments and humanitarian over the years, them provide, which has I feel extremely proud to be part of this work community. I started my work
Hi, too.
Hello.
Where is this being broadcast? In the main room. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Testing.
Hello, I am Mansaba. I'll be your interviewer for today. And over here we have a few people we are trying to interview, and we would want to know what their experience has been so far. So we have here McLean. Please, I would want you to tell us something small about yourself and then your expectation for this conference.
Sure, thank you for having me. My name is Nicolene McLean, and I'm from the Satellite Oceanography and Climatology Division of NESDIS at NOAA, and I help contribute to the US contribution of the GEO-Blue Planet Initiative, which is the arm of GEO that's geared towards using ocean and coastal observations to support policy and decision making. After the recently concluded session, I'm really pleased by the content of the discussion that was had, particularly in the plenary session, as it helped bring light to the fact that ocean and coastal observations can be used to help sustain development. And I am not sure what other questions you have for me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. So far, is there anything that you found particular with it, like with all the conferences you've attended from Monday till now? Is there anything that you found so particular that you would want to share with others in case you go back?
Yeah, so I was really pleased by the turnout at this year's GEO Week. As I mentioned during the plenary discussion, GEO has this significant convening power to bring together communities, different countries, different intergovernmental organizations, and that is exactly what has been demonstrated here today. And so I would say that the shared representation from diverse backgrounds of organizations, communities, and countries has been something that has been, particularly outstanding.
Okay. So we find it to be really outstanding that we have taken note of. But then with your experience here in Ghana, because I know this is the first time in Africa, and then Ghana to be precise, for GEO Week conference, is there anything that you would want to tell your friends back home or your family back home, like your experience here in Ghana when it came to the GEO Week conference? Is there anything you want to tell them?
Yeah, sure. So in addition to attending the GEO Week meeting, we also hosted the GEO-Blue Planet Symposium here in Accra last week, so from October 24th through to the 28th. So we've been here for quite some time, and I would say that it's been really motivating how receptive our hosts in Ghana have been, and how motivated the people are, especially the youth are, to exploring ways of using science and technology to inform policy and decision making for a better Ghana moving forward. Okay. So that has been great.
Okay, all right. So thank you so much, McLean, and we hope that you'll be able to enjoy the rest of your stay, and then we also get to see more of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Ghana has been incredible.
Thank you. All right, please. Hello, viewers. This is Ansaba, and I'm here to interview a couple of friends, colleagues for the GEO Week. And we have here Rita Ayi. She's a patron for the Youth International School, and we'll be taking off from here. Hello, Rita.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so how do you see the GEO Week?
Okay, so the GEO Week has been very, very, very impactful and so insightful. I've learned a lot. Actually, being the social studies facilitator in my school, Fountain of Youth International School, right here in Ghana, it will go a long way to help my youth over there. I'm so happy to be part of this program.
So what would you say about GEO Week in one sentence?
GEO Week is the future for the next generation.
Okay. All right. So did you have any sort of expectation for GEO Week?
Oh, yes. Actually, I was expecting for them to talk about this climate change issues pertaining to girl child. Yes, women and youth, but most importantly, the girl child. And I've really learned a lot. And I'm going back to my school to impart the young girls over there for them to be innovative in whatever they do and acquire knowledge. And I'm hoping the government opens up for more data accessibility. That's point.
Okay. So we are so happy we had you, and we want to tell you viewers to tune in and then expect more people. And also we want to say thank you for having us too.
Thank you also.
All right. So stay tuned for more.
So I'm based at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States, and I work at
经过2天紧张而有序的。 会同仁的共同努力下，
Hello, viewers. This is Ansaba, and we have here Emily Smale, and then she's the director for Global Blue, for Geo Blue, and she's here to tell us a little bit experience she had with Geo Week. Hello, Emily. You're welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Okay, so Emily would want to know your expectation you had for Geo Week.
So thank you. So one thing I'll say is for our initiative, the Geo Blue Planet Initiative, which is GEO's Ocean and Coastal Initiative, we had a symposium here in Accra last week. And leading up to that, we were really interested in following up with our colleagues in the other GEO activities that work more on land-based activities, because a lot of the challenges for the ocean and coastal community really are starting from land activities such as fertilizer pollution, which can cause algal blooms that can be nuisances, as well as marine litter. So this is a very big problem in West Africa and around the world. But so, you know, coming together and meeting the rest of the GEO community really helps to identify what kind of projects we can do to help identify the sources of problems and then try to monitor and solve issues.
So, in a sentence, how would you describe this Geo Week? How would you do? What would you say about Geo Week in a sentence?
I would say that Geo Week is a global gathering to get individuals who either produce or need Earth observation information to help with their environmental challenges. And experts come from a variety of different backgrounds and levels of expertise. We have people that work on agriculture, oceans and coasts, such as my activities, inland flooding, and so it's really just a way to get together a lot of diverse actors in the Earth observation community and then try to connect it with local stakeholders who need that information to properly manage their resources and keep their people safe.
Okay, thank you. And Emily, my last question will be, is there anything that you're taking home, maybe based on this Geo Week? Is there anything from any of the symposiums that you're taking home?
Yes, so one thing I think that's really great about being back in person for the GEO Week, since the past couple have been virtual, is being able to make some connections with new partners. I always find that easier to do in an in-person situation. But particularly with our African colleagues, we have met really a lot of phenomenal scientists that we're excited to collaborate with in the future. And I think that that's going to really be fruitful for GEO, as well as to give visibility to these great scientists in Africa, and hope that we can share their knowledge around the globe.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. So viewers, this was Emily Smale, and we had such a good time with her. Stay tuned as we wait for the next person. All right. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
应急响应、农情监测等定制化服务，共同面向最后1公里问题，制定有用、好用的解决方案。在未来在GEO中的深度参与，各位10年的发，既是面向2016知识梳理发展贡献力量来的益处，相信，谢谢。
would like to thank the GEO-GLAM crop monitor early warning community for their trust in me in leading this activity over the years, and my colleagues at the University of Maryland and NASA Harvest, without which none of this.
经过2天紧张而有序的工作，在各位同仁的共同努力下，
Hello, it's Ansaba, and we have here Mr. Baku. Welcome, Mr. Baku. Please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm Baku Maman. I'm working at Agrimet Regional Center, based in Niamey, Niger, in West Africa. So I'm part of the Servir West Africa team, Servir, which is a funded project by USAID and NASA.
Great, great. So, Mr. Baku, when you got here, did you come with some sort of expectation for GEO Week 2022?
Yes, of course, I come with some expectations. You know, the development of science is very, very fast. And we came here to hear about the update. We are using tools, and in 1 year or 2 years, there is a need to update everything that we are using. That's why we come here to hear from all the partners what they are doing to allow us to update the tools and the approaches that we are using to provide services to decision makers and end users.
Okay, so were your expectations met?
Yes, yes. My
Great.
expectations are met.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to ask, is there anything from any of the symposiums or meetings that you'll be taking back home?
Yeah, so you know, during this GEO, this is my third GEO week, GEO to attend. And this one is a special one because we have the chance to meet with some programs, key programs that we have in Africa. So this morning, we had a meeting which allow all of us to be connected. This is a very, very good opportunity for us. So it means that now in the field, we know who is doing what, and we'll be able to find the synergy, the collaboration between all those initiatives that are ongoing in Africa.
Great, great. So in a sentence, how would you describe GEO Week 2022?
So I think GEO Week is a good opportunity for the partnership, for the lesson learned, and for the uptake to be sure that we can provide more accurate services for our end users.
Okay, one last question. Do you think that the expectations for Geo Week 2022 would ever be met?
Yeah, from my side, I think this is the best Geo that I attended. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bako. We are glad we had you. And also, viewers, stay tuned for more. Thank you. Hello, it's Ansaba, and we have here Dr. Isa all the way from Nigeria. Welcome, Dr. Isa. Please, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Thanks so much. My name is Dr. Isa Iligbede from Nigeria. I'm one of the co-chair of the GEO Planet, and as well also representing TIGA IUCN, and as well affiliated with the Lagos State University in Nigeria. So glad to be here.
So you were a speaker today.
Yes.
Okay. So with all the speeches and the plans and goals, do you think it's realistic in Africa, and do you think it's going to really have impact?
Yes. During the discussion today, if you listen to what we discussed, you realize we give a report of one of the events we've been doing since last week. We were here at Alisa Hotel to talk about, for a symposium for GeoBlue Planet. And today, gracefully, we highlighted some of the outcomes of the symposium. And we had some action plans, and which we think are realistic, and which we have designed and co-designed, deliberated amongst participants on the way whereby all actors or all parties will be on board. I understand what you are saying, that some of those things might seem unrealistic, but bringing everybody on board, including having adequate finances, support, and we talked about bringing local knowledge, traditional knowledge, with the Western attributes. With this, we think those things we've been discussing today or since the beginning of this week, I am realistic and confident that putting all these checks in place, we are going to achieve all the outcomes as been deliberated from the program.
Okay. So, I would like to ask one more question. What do you think is in store for the future? So, for our future generations, what should we expect? What should we look out for? That's what I want.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, for the future generation, I believe we are doing the right thing now, because we are preparing a platform for them. Apart from this, like I said, last week we had a program where we invited young innovators, about more than 50, around 50, to bring about their ideas. The majority of them are from Ghana and also from outside the region. And based on the innovation program, I see future and I see prospects in the continent. And I will also appreciate and recognize the outcome of the GEO with all their efforts in connecting and bringing up youths. And if you check some of the activities that have been done, for example, the AfriGeo, we had young scientists that have been awarded a fellowship, and as well, the opening of this session was opened by a young participant. So telling us that the future is bright and the society is able to bring all early career or early scientists on board, so that they can replace the living oats, and so that they can have good stake in the future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Isa. My last question.
You're welcome.
My last question. So my last question is going to be, what is your take home from all the symposiums and meetings we've had since Monday till now? Is there anything that you'll be taking back home?
Yes. For me, my take home will be translated into action points, and which relates to spreading the message of development, and exploring Earth observation towards tackling some issues that we are facing in Africa, talking about food insecurity, social issues, environmental problems. So exploring Earth observation, not in isolation, however, with in situ data. And with this, we can be able to solve a lot of problems affecting us in Africa, and the need for open sharing of data so that the common man out there will be able to use that data and to use it for anything positive that the person would like to use it for.
Thank you so much, Dr. Issa.
Thank you.
So, viewers, we have here Dr. Issa, and we are done for now.
The interview. Thank you.
Yes. So, stay tuned as we call in for more, a few more, and then enjoy.
Thank you.
Radical Coco, you're the one say, hey, awesome dream, I'm an amaru, Uma, Rikwanu, Yaba, when you babu jump. Yaba wa yigwenyi bebucha kutu sawa Udo tiyasu umaye Asum twinyi Obodo na ben Oji Adibonyafu Nawu nyawu Ufi nare Fawu Oja sanyewu Nawu nyawu Oja sanyewu Asumdinyi Yeyewu deyinara Kabo sambu mayen Samyewu kanyene Sayare babo yene Jesus Papa awa eyi dogo Samyewu kanyene Sayare babo yene Jesus Krokro teyen na 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 Yiyantina una yuwem Manda di bana Babi di baba di baba babi 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 Jesus Christ, Jinya Jinya Braba Kanju Fie Jesus Christ, Jinya Asum Jinya Jinya Udeyi Nara Kabo Sambusu Mayano Sanya Ukayen Sayan Baboyen Jesus Christ, Jinya Sanya Ukayano, Saya Ukayane, Jesus, Christ, Hallelujah, 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 Amen, 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 Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Hello? How about now?
Hello, viewers. This is Ansaba, and we have here Golden Zhu, all the way from China, and he is the delegate to GEO Week 2022. You're welcome, Golden Zhu.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Gordon Yu. This is my English name. My Chinese name is Yu Zhongwen. I'm here with the Chinese delegation, and I also work with the Supermap Software Corporation. It's basically a company, Chinese company, specialized in GIS tools and solutions. Yeah, and we're very happy to be here, representing the Chinese delegation and also representing my company.
You're welcome once again. Okay, so Golden Zhu, did you have any expectation for GEO Week 2022? And were those expectations met?
Well, yeah, I'd like to say it's like much more than my expectation. You see, our company is in the GIS sector, and I'm very happy to see that you know there is a very dynamic network here in GEO Week. We are able to meet all the professionals and government you know officials here, and besides you know sharing the application of remote sensing data, Earth observation data in the different sectors. And also I see there is a very big place where GIS can play a very important role. Everybody is mentioning about machine learning, AI technologies, you know, for the different data. And that's exactly what Supermap is good at. And you know, our AI plus GIS technology and also for the machine learning technology is one of our cutting edge technologies. And I'm sure we will have a much bigger role to play in the GEO community and also in Ghana, which is the host nation of this event. Yeah, so thank you for the GEO Week, and also thanks Ghana.
Okay. All right, Golden Zhu, I would want to ask one more question. So for the youth who are still new to this GEO Week, everything about GIS, what is your advice to them?
Well, my advice is very simple. Try to get started as soon as possible. For example, Supermap, we are doing well in China and Asia, and in the African continent, we consider ourselves a new player. So that decides our behavior, our also market operation, is that we are very keen to share our technologies. So that means we are willing to share with the professional community our trial licenses and also our tutorials. And we try to make everybody, you know, make it easy for everybody to get started with Supermap tools. Yeah, and also, if possible, start the application of Supermap tools in the different sectors. We are always ready. And yeah, so the suggestion is that get started and come to us whenever you feel you know, interested and necessary.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we had Golden Zhu, and we want to say thank you so much for coming. And we would want our viewers to stay tuned as we wait for others to also come around, and hopefully you get to hear something that you may have missed, or you may be looking out for. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's one of the dirty. My baby trees are for one. I'm a woman with him one minute. Uba was I? Me can't get blown all day away. Visit me down, man. Man, what for them out? It's if I'm a mama, yo. Osubuke Simayenti. Yadayo. Oh baby, Osubuke Simayenti. Yadayo. You gotta hear it now, hey. On your identity, and your mouth better, that them of Becca, you better say it. Salo, Waka, they vote that man do. Lift up to them, they vote that man do. You will get the punishment later. Judge when